for joining us for another episode of Parent Like a Professional. We're so glad that you're here. Today, we're going to answer some common questions surrounding potty training. I'm Doris. We have Stephanie, Monica, and Marquis.
Awesome. We got some really good questions for you guys from some of our parents. So one question that came up is, I'm having my child sit for a really long time, but as soon as he gets off the potty, within 3 minutes, he's having an accident. So do I need to have him sit longer? What do I do?
I can jump in and I can answer this question. I think that it's a common thing that all of us parents go through when we're trying to potty train our kids. I think that if your child is having an accident within 3 minutes getting off the potty, then I would suggest that maybe rather than giving them a break for the 3 minutes is having them come back half the time. So if they didn't have a successful potty, then when they're off the potty, because they've been sitting a long time, then just have them come back maybe like a minute and a half sooner, rather than letting them have the 3-minute break. So that way, if it is 3 minutes, you're catching that time and having them sit back on the potty, and hopefully at that point you'll have a success, and then they can have that 3-minute break afterwards.
Awesome. Okay, we had another question. So this parent expressed they're really worried because their child doesn't seem to be affected if they have an accident and they're wet.
Well, that could be a tricky one. One question I would have, or make a small suggestion, is just if they are having them fully clothed, because when they're clothed and they have like pants on, it does kind of hold some of that wetness. So maybe a suggestion of just going to underwear or just totally bare, because it makes it not so easy to move around and it's a lot more apparent.
Yeah, I think having like more clothes, I think then they're not able to feel that wetness. I think you're right. So like maybe just having underwear. And then also if when they're wearing like just the underwear or nothing at all, then you can actually see maybe when they're having the accident, and then you can rush them to the bathroom, and hopefully they can finish. If you happen to see it. If you don't happen to see it, then that wouldn't work. But I think yeah, like just minimal clothing when you can, if it's just hanging around the house in the early stages of potty training, to hopefully catch when that's happening, and then rushing them to the bathroom when it does.
Another idea was just making it so that if you're constantly looking at, or when they are wet, maybe there's some kind of consequence, like a removal of something, or they lose access to a favorite toy or something like that. Whereas also really reinforcing them when they are dry. So just continuously pointing those things out. So maybe in smaller increments. So that does become more, if they really quote unquote don't care that they're wet, try to figure out a way to make them number one is more aware, but then also care, I guess.
It's a really good idea. You're right. Like having them like tacting or telling them like, oh, you're dry, like good job being dry, I'm so proud of you. And then they get access to their highly preferred toys or activities, when you are checking in on that.
How often would you suggest checking in to see if they're dry?
So I think that's a good question. And I think that the first thing you want to do is when, your child is off the potty, that they're either not wearing anything because you're potty training, or like they're wearing underwear. You want to make sure your child's not wearing diapers. With the underwear, then it's easier to check, and you can check to make sure that they're dry. And I would suggest like every 15, 20 minutes, maybe. Kind of just depends on how long they're off the potty for, but it's really important that they are wearing either only underwear or nothing at all during this phase of potty training.
And using darker colored underwear is not, like gray is actually, I think, a good color, because then you can see any kind of wet right away, from even far away. So using darker or like a gray color underwear is pretty helpful to catch those.
I also just thought of something too. What about training underwear? The underwear that are very thick in the front.
I mean, I would avoid it, because you're going to miss seeing that wetness right away because it doesn't absorb as much as diapers, but it still does absorb. So I would avoid those. Maybe you can use those when they're on the nap time and things like that, but not during potty training.
Got it.
Okay, so next question. So we had another question come from a parent and they kind of expressed some frustration. They highlight that they've been being really good all day. They've been working on it all day, following the steps, but now they're growing frustrated later in the day and their child is tantruming and they're kind of in a tantruming cycle. Like, what should they do at that point? Do they give up?
Don't give up. I would say it hasn't, we're talking about a couple hours here. And so, obviously knowing that this is something new, something different, but staying the course, and knowing that you're tackling one thing at a time. So at least give it a sufficient amount of time to be able to really, see how things are going before you give up. But like, that's the major thing is to just stay the course, and not steer away from what you're trying to achieve.
I was going to say also reevaluating what you have to offer the kiddo if they're having a hard time. Usually like kids want to spend time with their parents and want to engage with them, especially when they have all their reinforcers. So maybe reassessing and going back and looking to make sure you have those items before you are placing, really difficult demands on them, like potty training, so that you can make sure that you're coming in with all the backup you need.
Yeah, and I think also just making sure that they're only, if you have like those, once you do the evaluation and you are able to figure out what it is that they really want, that they don't have those things when they're not, when you're working on whatever level, whatever week of potty training that you're in, whether you're introducing the bathroom or working on, having them void in the toilet, just reserving those special activities or foods or whatever it is that they want for that particular moment. So, because typically if you really have what you like, you might be more willing to kind of do the things that you really don't feel like up to. And then just keeping those things away so they're not accessing those things when they're not in the bathroom.
So a parent submitted the question. They were pretty honest. They said that they saw our series, but they had already tried to do potty training on their own before watching, and now their child won't go anywhere near the restroom, even if preferred activities are being offered. So they're struggling there and looking for some help.
I would say for this one that we kind of have to take some steps back and kind of start from ground zero, and really once again like having those favorite things that your child is really into and limiting those to just, they're not going to go in the bathroom, but maybe we can have those things outside of the bathroom or somewhere near the bathroom, and it might be 10 feet away. Like it might not even be anywhere near the bathroom, but the goal is to eventually get your child with their preferred items closer and closer and closer to the bathroom. And then it might take a long time, and that's okay. But then the idea would be to eventually get back into the bathroom and start all over. You're going to have to start backwards, but that's fine, because then now you've watched our series and you can, figure out the right ways to do it without having too many issues, hopefully.
So I was going through your steps and I was listening, and it sounds like that this is going to require a lot of attention. I do have other kids. I cook, I have chores. Like, what is my day going to look like in order to do this right?
I would say if you do have help around the house, obviously to try and seek that help. But the idea is for, if you consistently follow the steps that are outlined in the potty training series, that you can dedicate, we try to aim for maybe 2 consecutive days, and ideally days that you may have a lighter load. So if you have older children that can maybe go outside of the home for a little bit, or if you have relatives that can come assist, prep your meals in advance, so that you have like that time and dedication to be able to commit to at least those first couple days. So the idea is that if you really commit to everything that we outline or that we suggest, for those couple days, then the idea is that things should flow and you should not be having to spend as much time as time working on potty training as time progresses.
One of our parents wanted to know, when do they start working on wiping, having the child wipe?
So I would suggest we're going to tackle one thing at a time. So the primary goal is having the child potty trained. Um, you as the parent, after your child uses the restroom, you can go ahead and wipe and then start pairing or saying certain phrases at the same time that you're wiping. So maybe front to back or whatever the case may be. And so eventually down the line, once they're fully potty trained and you want to introduce them wiping on their own, at least they have some words to put to the actions that they're actually doing. But I would definitely suggest just targeting actually voiding in the toilet, and then later on down the line, tackling the wiping component.
Yeah, once you see them start having the success on the toilet is when you can start like increasing that, request of them, because right now it's just, you want it simple, just all you have to do is pee and you get all this. But if it's like you have to pee, then you got to wipe, then you got to wash your hands. I mean, they still need to go through those steps. It's just that you're going to be helping them along those. So it's not a requirement before they get that reinforcer or that prize after they void in the toilet. So, and then you can start increase what the requirements are as they're successful.
Thanks so much to all the parents that submitted questions. If watching this episode helped you come up with questions, please feel free to comment or visit our website to submit a question. You can find us at parentlikeaprofessional.com or at parentlikeaprofessional on all social media. So thanks so much, everybody. If you haven't watched episodes 1 through 3, we highly recommend that you do.
Bye.